I'm always honored to be able to speak here, and it's in part because of the others who speak here that I get to stand in their space, but it's also to be able to face you, this community that I love so much, that I feel so close to, that I have people that I feel so close to. It really is an honor to be able to stand here and give the talk. And today's very challenging for me because I was called to give a talk about something that I find difficult to put into words, because I'm talking about the divine feminine in relation to Christmas. And I'm one of those people that I grew up in the 70s. I'm 51 years old. Some of you may be able to relate to that. At a time when everything was being degenderified, when we were learning to stop looking at the word doctor and the word man as the same, when we were learning to stop using words like fireman, and they came up with the quite workable firefighter or postal carrier. And there was a lot of effort in the 1970s, particularly for those of us growing up, to really step past these ideas of gender. This idea that one gender had one set of traits and the other gender had the others, and that was how things worked. But I remember one place where that was never, ever brought up was in talking about God. Now, I was raised Catholic, but I think many people who grew up during that same time frame really had the same view, especially as children, of God. God was the old white bearded guy. And if you look at the ceiling in the Sistine Chapel, an old white bearded guy that hit the gym a lot. Apparently, I don't know, God's out chopping wood for the winter all the time because, man, take a look at that. Very, very, and again, a very hyper-masculine depiction of God. But what I do know is that for a long time, culturally, in the lineage that we come from, the idea of the feminine divine is largely ignored. The idea of God, even beyond gender, is largely ignored. And what we have is a very patriarchal God, often a very angry God, the kind of God that if you get the car out too late would blow up a village. And this is not necessarily the truth, but it's sometimes where we get stuck. So I was struck by something as I was preparing for this talk, as I was trying to decide what to talk about here at the opening of the holiday season, the opening of Christmas. And I realized something that was really interesting about the way the Bible is portrayed. And women don't do well in the Bible. We all know that. That's not a controversial statement. But I noticed that the only time that God saw cooperation, that God sought out another in creation, was in bringing forth the Christ consciousness, or bringing forth Jesus, the vessel who would symbolize the Christ consciousness. Because when God wants to create something in the Bible, what does God do? Boom, it's there. Light, it's there. Oceans, there. Animals, there. People, there. Creating man and woman, there. Didn't need anything else. God in the Bible is not a great example of cooperation. But in this thing, this most important central piece of our lives and our experience and our truth, the birth of Jesus, the beginnings symbolically of the Christ consciousness, God needed the divine feminine. The patriarchy alone could not do it. For this most important act of creation, a woman had to be involved. So I'm not talking about the literal, because let's be honest, the Christ consciousness existed long before Jesus was born, existed in many places that never heard of Jesus. In fact, another term for it is the Buddha nature. But in the symbolism of this story, in the symbolism of the story of the birth of Jesus, for the first time that I can remember, God came to a woman and said, join with me in this. We need to create the vessel that will give rise to that which is called the Christ consciousness. Does that make sense? And we view Jesus differently. Some of you who are new to Unity may not know this, but we have an absolutely beautiful way that we view Jesus. And that is as the great example, not the exception. Jesus is the great way shower. Jesus is an example of someone who understood his oneness with the divine, who taught from that place of oneness, who shared from that place of oneness. That God is all there is, I am one with God, is present in the teachings of Jesus. And so I found it fascinating that the divine made manifest on earth in that way, for us to know that we are all divine, required a woman, required the feminine.